I'm going to demo you how to provision your Sitecore 8.2 Update 1 solution to Azure Web Apps. This is what you get when you download the ARM templates from Sitecore. Please note that this is an early access preview and the final release will probably be a little bit different. But before diving into these files, we first need to set up MongoDB. And I did that with a MongoDB MLab plan. So let's start logging into MLab. And you can use this both for your production environment, but also for development and testing purposes. To do so, create a new deployment. And if you pick single node, then you'll see that you have the option to use a free sandbox deployment. And you can analytics demo. Enter the database name over here. After doing that, you go into your new deployment and you can add a database user. And this is really all there is to. And what you get is you have a connection string over here that you can use in your Sitecore provisioning. Right now, I have already done this, and I created 4 databases: analytics, tracking, contact, the history, and tracking live databases. So these databases are up and running, and I have the connection string over here. Having done this, I can go to the ARM templates. And the first thing you want to do is you want to replace the license file with your own license file, preferably a full Sitecore XP license to be able to test out all features of Sitecore 8.2 Update 1. Then we go into the ARM templates folder that contains the different setups of Sitecore. Currently there's only these 3 in here, but upon release it will probably have more versions in it. The default sample script sets up an XP1. So let's work with these XP1 templates for this demo. And in here you see the MongoDB connection strings. I have already updated these with the connection strings from my MLab instances. And after that, you want to fill in the SQL Server login and password you want to use. Please note that you don't have to put in existing login parameters. It's what you fill in right here is what Azure will use to provision the Azure SQL databases and connect them to Sitecore. And lastly, what you see here is the deployment packages. You can just use the default ones from Sitecore, but you can also download them and add them to your own blob storage, so the provisioning goes faster because it's in the same data center. And being sure that the parameter file is up to date, we're going to edit the PowerShell script. And the PowerShell script contains parameters for the template you use, and in this case we're going to stick with XP1, and we are going to name our deployment. Let's make it Web Apps Resource Group A. This is also going to be the name of your resource group. Then you can fill in a location. And I should note one thing that for me didn't work. because Application Insights, which will also be provisioned, is not globally available yet. Within the ARM templates, it's hard-coded as a location. If I go down here, you see that over here the location is hard-coded, and for the default setup that was Central US, and that didn't work with my Azure subscription in combination with my resource group that was created in West Europe. So you can do two things. You can just change the location over here, or you can make an extra parameter for it in your PowerShell script, so you can configure it over here. That's up to you. Fill in your subscription ID, and that's actually all there is. And there's two ways of logging into Azure in your subscription. The first one is via a pop-up you will get, and the second one, which is probably the preferable one when you work with a live environment in a continuous integration setup, and that's by using a service principal, and you can find the documentation over here. I didn't use this one, so for the demo I'm going to just log into Azure via the pop-up that I get. So that's all there is to it. I'm going to save my PowerShell script. I'm going to go to an elevated PowerShell, and I'm going to run my script. But first you have to be sure that you met the prerequisites. The first one is that you have to use PowerShell 4, which you can check in the version table. So I'm good to go, and you have to install the Azure commandlets, which can be done like this, and you first have to install this one, the Azure Resource Manager, and then you have to install the module Azure. I have already done that, which I can check by listing the available modules to make sure that it is installed correctly. And as you can see, the Azure and the Azure RM modules are both installed. So I can continue to run my script, and because I'm not using a service principal over here, I have to log in manually, so let's do that. I'm going to use my script admin that I've created for this purpose. Going to sign in, and it starts provisioning. It checks if my resource group already exists, and now we just have to wait. And that was all. You can see the deployment is successful. However, this output is written by default, so we have to go and look at the provisioning state, which tells us if it's succeeded. Because if it's failed, this deployment successful text will appear anyway. But this is the crucial key. It has succeeded. So now we are going to look at our resource groups. I refresh and I see that I have resource group 8, and it's provisioned with all the services that I need. It contains a Redis instance, an application insight instance, a search. We have the different SQL databases with the server. We have an app service plan for each different app, because this makes it possible to scale differently per a different type of Sitecore instance. So now we can scale the apps differently. Like we do not want to scale up or out the content management, but maybe we do want to scale out our content delivery instances. And scaling is very easy. You can scale to a specific number of instances, but you can also scale based on rules like the CPU percentage. So let's say my target range lies between 0 and 80%, and I want 1 to 3 instances. And this would mean that the content delivery service will try to stay below 80% CPU, and if one instance hits 80%, it will automatically spin up a second instance. It's very easy to set up. So now let's take a look at our freshly deployed Azure app. And here it is. So to give a small recap, the only things that I did was change the template parameters, added the PowerShell script, and then run the PowerShell script. And that resulted in a freshly deployed new vanilla Sitecore instance. But it's vanilla, so we have to do a little bit more. I'm going to switch back to a previously deployed app because that's configured to use my Visual Studio. But what you can do is, there are different ways to cope with this, deploying to web applications, and you can go to the web app and download the publish profile. And you can just use that into your Visual Studio, so you can publish to this web application. What I did is I arranged my solution folder like this. Over here we have the dependencies that I'm using to reference them from my solution. We have the provisioning script, which I've used to provision this initially, and I'm also storing this in my Git repository. And then what I've done is I've downloaded this content management package of Sitecore, which is a SCWDP, which stands for Sitecore Web Deploy package. And I have extracted that, and what you can see is it's actually very obvious what's in there. You have a content folder that contains a vanilla Sitecore installation, as you would also expect when you install it locally. And it contains multiple DACPAC files, which you can use to restore the database within your SQL environment. And it's really easy. Just import the DACPAC file and it creates the database for you. As for now, there's no installer yet for Sitecore 8.2 update 1. I expect that it will also show up when it's finally released, but for now I'm using this. And I have copied this to a website folder, and this website folder is the one I'm using for my local instance. I've created an IIS site, which is in here, and I have bound that to this website folder. Furthermore, I have a solution folder because I'm working outside my web root, and I've created a new solution, which is over here. And for now it only contains the very basic stuff like a web config file, the app data, the app config. One of the things that that changed from previous Sitecore installations is that Sitecore decided to move the data folder to the app data folder. So it used to live next to the website folder, the website root, and so your solution could also use that one. But now Sitecore decided to put it in the app data folder, and that's obviously because you're running in a web app context, and you want to have everything within your web root, so it's easier to deploy. You also want to deploy your unicorn files, and I'm not sure if I'm fully happy with this, but I'm experimenting with that. I have included the app data folder in my solution, and I changed the app data folder. Well, this is the default, it's data. For Azure, I'm using the default one, and for development, I'm using the app data folder of my solution instead of the deployed website. So Unicorn will synchronize all the items within the Unicorn folder over here. And I've done this little trick. Let's go into my project file, and what I've done is I've used wildcards within the item group that contains the app data folder. And I've not only included the license file, but I also include every unicorn item that's in here. So what happens if I deploy locally to my development environment, which I'm going to do right now? It's going to publish to my local instance, which is and here is my local instance. So I can go in here and let's log in. And I'm going to change the title of my website to the Sitecore Experience Platform on Web Apps. I'm going to save this, and upon doing so, you'll see that my that Unicorn will serialize this. Okay, let's go to the 7 version, which is the one I've used to set up my Visual Studio with. Then I'm going to Visual Studio, and I'm going to deploy to Azure. I use the publish settings that I've downloaded to publish to. And let's go to, well, I have to log in first. So let's synchronize our freshly published web app from Visual Studio. Okay, there's still an error, but not relevant for this demo. So let's go to Sitecore. And as you can see, the content has been updated, and if I now publish, and go to my web app, then I can see it has been updated. So to conclude, I have my Visual Studio solution set up. What I did is I created 2 publishing profiles. This one is downloaded from Azure and it connects via web deploy to my web app. And the other one deploys to my local file system. For the connection strings, I've connected my local environment to my own local SQL instance, and for Azure there's something to it, because the default connection strings wouldn't work on Azure, and the connection strings are set up by the PowerShell script and the ARM template. So it's difficult to put this together, and you also cannot leave it out of the solution because you need to deploy it locally. So I did, but I don't think that is a very good, reliable solution. But what I did for the time being is I went into the content management web app we have here. I went to the console, and here you have a console where you can browse through the files, and I went to the app config folder, and I then just typed the connection strings file and copied it into my solution. So when it's being overridden, it still is the same, and that's this that's this translation. And that's it for this demo. I have a running Sitecore instance in Web Apps, and I can build and connect to it via Visual Studio and using Web Deploy.